from Louisville Public Media. Support for this podcast comes from KTC Building, seamlessly blending the classic character of older structures with 21st century amenities and technologies. Residential and commercial remodeling projects of any size. Details at KyleThompsonCompany.com. I'm Jonice Franklin.
And I'm Amina Elahi.
And this is Here Today, a podcast about Louisville's changing West. You hear it all the time. There's a lot of investment coming to the West End.
Here's Mayor Greg Fisher.
You've heard me talk about it many times before, but there's a total of about $13 billion of investment taking place in our city over the past 4 years. $1 billion of it is taking place in West Louisville.
Today we're going to break that down for you.
$1 billion in West Louisville.
There are a handful of major projects that can make up the bulk of this massive wave of investment if they reach the scale that's been promised, or if they happen at all. We think of them as kind of the big four.
Let's start at the corner of 18th Street and West Broadway, where there's a project that's actually pretty well in the works and scheduled to open this fall. The city spent more than $1 million redoing that intersection because of the development that's planned there. It's a $28 million YMCA. Steve Tarver is the CEO of YMCA Greater Louisville.
This has been a 10-year endeavor. We were the first major investment to announce in West Louisville, and we're the only one of the first four announced endeavors that has actually come to reality.
He says he sees it as more than just a gym.
A lot of people tell us that they believe that this community has been disinvested over a number of years. There's been a lack of accessibility to the job market and things like that. So I think all of those things come into factor in terms of building a healthier community, because you need academic health, you need fiscal health, you need character health, and you need a place to belong. And we think that we'll fill all of those buckets, or at least help to.
The YMCA is being built where Philip Morris used to be, a factory where they made cigarettes like Marlboro, Merit, and Virginia Slims.
I mean, it's just interesting, too, right? It's like we're talking about an area that has had such poor health outcomes. And in fact, air and breathing-related health outcomes that are so much worse than the rest of the city. And now we're seeing efforts to put in more health-focused organizations. So it's not just like there's investment and there's business being developed there, but there's an acknowledgement of the fact that there's a need to focus on health, not just capital.
$1 billion.
Right across 18th Street, one block to the west, is a larger project that is not doing quite as well as the YMCA, which is to say that it's at a standstill.
It was supposed to be a new headquarters for Passport Health, which was the only nonprofit Medicare management company in Kentucky.
It also overwhelmingly serves Louisville, including West Louisville.
The project seemed to be going well.
There are cranes, there's construction equipment, there's a steel frame going up, you can see it taking shape.
Until a few months ago.
Essentially what happened was that the state decided to cut certain Medicaid reimbursement rates. That affected how much Passport was collecting while it was still a nonprofit.
In February, Passport sent out a press release saying the project was being put on indefinite hiatus.
And I thought, that doesn't sound good. A couple months after they paused construction, Passport decides to sell itself to its for-profit partner, Evolent. And so that changes the calculus a little bit. And now there's a new CEO who comes from Evolent, and he says, this thing is going to be priority. We're going to try to start it back up. But first, we got to stabilize. So we're in this situation where the city has invested money into this corner. Other organizations have invested time and money into this corner. And the community has bought into this concept of it's going to be a place where we can really address the community's health issues, both on an individual basis and sort of on a societal basis, right? And so now it's just like, I think there's that fear of, we keep getting promised things and they don't happen.
It certainly happened before.
Is that where Walmart was going to go?
Yes.
Can we talk about that?
Yeah. So around 2013, 2014, a Walmart was supposed to be built at 18th and Broadway, where the Passport headquarters are now supposed to go up. And some people were excited about it, but some people were concerned about various issues, including the design of the store, also employment practices, and other issues. There was a lawsuit even, and all of this controversy surrounding the Walmart kind of just killed the project.
So it's fair to say that this is a site that people in the city and the community expected to turn into something. And it seemed until recently like it was turning into something. And now we're just in a holding pattern.
$1 billion.
That basically covers the major stuff at 18th and Broadway. If we head a little west and a little north of that, we hit another site that's had promises fall through. And that is the 24-acre brownfield at 30th between Muhammad Ali and Market Street that is projected to be the site of a major indoor-outdoor track and field complex developed by the Louisville Urban League.
This is also the site of the West Louisville FoodPort, the failed West Louisville FoodPort. So also in 2016, when plans to bring a Walmart to the West End failed, plans for this, I think they called it a local food hub, like intended to spur the local food economy, basically. Plans for that failed.
The anchor tenant of the FoodPort project actually pulled out, which made that not economically feasible.
Sadiqa Reynolds is the president and CEO of the Louisville Urban League.
And so I went home and I prayed and I just said, God, help me think of something. I mean, at the time I took this job, there was going to be this project and that project, and now we're back to nothing. And when I opened my eyes, Usain Bolt was on the news with all these gold medals around his neck. He had won everything he ran in at the Olympics. And I remembered that I had been in so many meetings over the years with track coaches and people who said, we really need an indoor sports facility. We really need an indoor track.
So this is another site in the West End that people were hopeful that something would come to that would be helpful, like a food port, like a place to get some fresh local food, I guess. That was canceled. And then the city decided to take submissions for what to do at this site.
And so anyway, long story short, we won because we put together an amazing team.
And that's how we got to the Louisville Urban League sports complex, because they beat out 3 other.
What were the other ideas?
One was a mixed-use site of retail, housing, and green space, so another mixed-use facility. One was a biotech research park, I think based on what you see in North Carolina at the Triangle there. What's that called?
Research Triangle.
Research Triangle in North Carolina. And the other was a community-owned grocery store.
Are there enough grocery stores in the West End?
No, there are not enough grocery stores in the West End. And to be quite honest, I thought for sure that was the obvious pick. I thought the city was going to pick the community-owned grocery store.
Because it's an interesting choice for the site. You know, there's the one argument that this could become an actual magnet for tourism in the West End, which is what the Urban League says and what Sadiqa Reynolds says. You know, track and field is a big sport. Having an indoor facility means that it can be used throughout the year. They're projecting that during track season alone, it could attract tens of thousands of people to the West End. On the other hand, this area in particular lacks amenities that might serve the people who come for those track and field events. Hotels, retail, restaurants, functioning sidewalks. So from basic to less basic. To hear Sadiqa talk about it, this is something the community has bought into. This is something the city is excited about. She is very excited about it. And yet they're still trying to raise money. And that's the situation we find ourselves in now, which is that they announced this project. By December of last year, they had raised about $17 million and had said that their goal was to raise about 30 to 35 overall. And now here we are in July, more than 6 months later, and they're still at 17 million and a bit more. So now the league is talking about raising more money for this project. And they want to do that by selling the naming rights to the 4,000 seats that are going to be in the facility. And that means, you know, give us $5,000, we'll put your name on a seat. If you're a corporation, buy a whole row and we'll put your name on the whole row. And their goal is to raise another $20 million by this fall. I asked Sadiqa, okay, so you started saying about 30 to 35 million. You've raised 17 and change. Now you're looking for another 20 million. So is the new number 37?
No, 20 million. I need you to focus on $20 million. I'm not out $20 million. We're raising money until the project is done. Let's just keep rolling on this. We're going to get enough. Let's just keep moving forward. So we will tell people when we're done.
Got it. So
Okay.
you're not putting a ceiling on it.
I'm not putting a ceiling on this.
Okay.
I'm going to take it to the moon.
I could see the sports complex coming to the West End after, say, like a grocery store, maybe a hotel, maybe some restaurants to eat at. Because when I think of a sports complex and I hear the argument that, like, you know, people's kids are competing in these track and field events, they're going to come. They're going to come and they're going to spend their money. And there's, you know, and I've heard Sadiqa say in news stories, in interviews, I've heard her talk about it sort of being recession proof, you know, and bringing people with expendable income into the neighborhood. But where are they going to spend the money is my question. Inside the sport, maybe she means inside the sports complex. I'm not sure, because I'm sure they'll have concessions and stuff there.
Right.
But they're not going to spend it there staying in any hotels. They're not going to spend it in the West End in a grocery store buying supplies for their stay here. They're not going to spend it in the West End eating in restaurants because there's nothing there yet.
It's a chicken and egg situation.
Right.
This is an idea that has buy-in from a lot of people in the community. And Sadiqa herself is a very intelligent and charming person, and she really sells this idea. And I think there are people who believe that if it's successful, it could actually transform that area. I mean, if nothing else, that area is unusable right now. So anything is better than that. But I think some people have questions about the feasibility of raising enough money to turn the project into what they're saying they want it to be. I mean, maybe the best case scenario is you build this thing and it does attract tourists. And it's such a nice facility that local universities and schools, local residents throughout Louisville come to use it. And that in turn starts to encourage some development, some additional investment in the neighborhood. And ideally, it's people who live in the neighborhood who are owning and building those businesses. And over time, you see this sort of resurgence or some building of wealth in the area. But none of that happens without the funding. I'm looking at this in terms of you've made this promise now that you're going to build this thing to a community that is constantly being disappointed and that I imagine must struggle to hope that plans are going to come to fruition. The question that remains in my mind is it going to happen or is it not? Why or why not? And either way, what does it do to the people who live there?
$1 billion.
Let's head back east. Now we're at the corner of Muhammad Ali and 9th Street, border of downtown, facing the 9th Street divide, which we talked about last time. And one of the most prominent developments in this phase of the West End and probably the history of the West End, Beecher Terrace, is being rebuilt.
We got an overview of all of this from Lisa Osenka. She's the director of the Louisville Metro Housing Authority.
These units were built barrack-style housing in the mid-last century, and they had some comprehensive modernization in the 1990s. But if you've been inside one, you know it is barrack-style housing where the walls are concrete block, and the layout is not very functional, and there are just environmental concerns with some of the building materials that were used at the time. These units are functionally obsolete. And so this is an opportunity for us to create new energy-efficient units for our community.
And it's being funded by HUD. It's being funded by the city. And the idea is that they're not just rebuilding these apartments. They're redoing the whole concept of what Beecher Terrace is.
We're going to talk about Beecher Terrace in the next episode. We'll also hear from some folks who used to live there and a family that's currently displaced by the rebuilding.
I haven't found a grocery store yet because the one I usually go to, Beecher 43 bus, will get me down there and then back. So that's the challenge here.
1 billion in West Louisville.
Here Today is produced and reported by Amina Elahi, Laura Ellis, Jonice Franklin, and Kaylin Jackson. Special thanks to Big Fake for today's Mayor Remix music. You can find them on Twitter at Big Fake in Hell. Website and data reporting by Alexandra Canick. Special thanks to Elizabeth Kerrigan for photos and to Ben and Sarah Carter for workspace. You can support Here Today by clicking the link in our show notes and making a one-time donation. You can learn more about the show and follow news and events in the West End at HereTodayPodcast.org. From Louisville Public Media,